Good morning, everybody. My name is Ritesh. I'm the country manager and director for Rockschool, and welcome to this first webinar in English for the debut grade theory. This is a series of webinars which is going to be covering from grade debut to grade 8 in weeks and months to come. So every week I'll be trying to cover one grade, but at higher grades level, maybe grade 6 to 8, we might have two webinars because it may get a little long because the content is going to be quite intense at that level. So, just to give you a brief intro, I am the country manager director for Rockschool. I have been teaching music for about 20 years, performing for about 30 years now. Taught at Delhi School of Music for 15 years, and my personal interest has been a lot in theory of music. I'm a pianist, keyboard player. I've played over 500 odd concerts, playing with rock bands, jazz bands, classical singers, and all kinds of stuff. Even with the Indian National Youth Orchestra and classical formats as well. So. Just a couple of announcements before we start. In case you have any doubt, please put in a message on the side and I will keep an eye on the messages. If there's any question related to the theory that I'm discussing, please discuss that. Kindly keep your queries within the framework of the theory being discussed, and please don't ask me for the practical performance tips in this particular session. We can always hold, if there's interest in it, we can always hold a second session just to introduce, talk about the piano playing technique and keyboard techniques and all of those things. Just subscribe to this channel and do hit the like if you like the content being discussed here. The recording to this webinar will be available on the same link post this webinar as well. So I'm hoping to hear a lot of questions from you regarding this debut grade theory. The content that I'm sharing is not the official explanations of the theory from Rockschool UK. This is based on the guidebooks of Rockschool and based on my personal teaching experience of about 20 years, teaching theory specifically. So it is based on all of those things, and I hope you will enjoy and find this whole session pretty useful. So let's get on, and we're going to start with the debut grade theory. So please don't mind me looking around a little bit because I'm handling all of this alone, so a lot of scenes to manage and things like that. So let's start with this. Each of these theory books published by Rockschool, grade debut to grade 8, have 4 sections in common. The first section is the music notation part. Second is the popular music harmony. Third is band knowledge. And fourth is band analysis. So band analysis kind of puts everything together into one unit, and it addresses music notation part and everything concerning to it. Also, mind you, there's a certain amount of delay from when you see it and when you post a comment and when I read it. So please be a little patient if I take a couple of minutes to get back to your questions. But I will definitely address all the questions there are to be answered. So without further ado, let's start with the debut grade theory. Debut grade particularly has one more section right in the beginning. It is called the prelims. So the prelims is basically just the absolute basics of how the music theory works, right? It's really the grammar of music. So it's going to be absolute basics of that. So I'm going to cover that. And I am using the slides from the theory workbook. I did send out links to some of you yesterday, and a lot of you already have the books in hand. So please refer to the books wherever necessary, and do feel free to ask me questions if any. Let's move on. So it starts with how to draw the treble clef. Right? It really starts in the first space here, right? And it goes around, touches the middle line, touches the bottom line, makes a loop on the top and left. Sorry, don't mind my treble clef. I'm using a digital pen, but they have given you smaller size stuff. As you go up the levels, you'll realize that you would be needing more space on the paper to write your music, and a broad staff like this is not very helpful. So you need to practice making these treble clefs on a smaller staff as well. The next one is going to be how to make the bass clef, and I'm just going to explain in a bit what treble and bass really is. It starts on the 4th line here, goes around, touches the top line, and finishes in the first space. And you make 2 dots, always in the 3rd and the 4th space. By the way, the staff is a set of 5 lines which we use to write music, and the lines are numbered always from bottom to top. This is line number 1, this is line number 2, this is line number 3, 4 and 5, right? This is how it works. So these are the lines on the staff. Since there are 5 lines, there are 4 spaces between them. This is space number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are how the lines in the spaces are numbered. And depending on which line or space the note is given, that decides the pitch of that note or the name of that note, whether it's a C, D, E, F, like that, right? So we will discuss all of this in detail. Again, with the bass clef, you have been given a smaller size staff and even smaller size staff. So you can practice writing the bass clef like that. So let me just quickly show you the concept of the treble and the bass. So you can see the keyboard on your screen, and this note in the middle of the piano is known as the middle C, and the higher pitches on the right are written on the treble side of it, and the lower pitches on the left are written on the left, written on the bass clef. So what are pitches? What is a pitch? So pitch, basically source of all sound is vibration, and the number of vibrations per second is counted in hertz. So higher the number of vibrations, the higher the pitch. So if I play something like this, that's pretty high pitch. In fact, that is 880 hertz. I'm playing the A one octave above the middle C. That's 880 hertz. This A is taken as 440 hertz, and that is the standard tuning for music around the world, right? Similarly, as you go down, the A below that is going to be exactly half of it, which is why they sound as the same pitches. So lower the frequencies, you are going towards the bass clef, and higher the frequencies, you're going towards the treble clef. Obviously, all the instruments that use only the high frequencies, they only use the treble clef, and all the instruments that only use the low frequencies, like the bass guitar, they only use the bass clef. So let me just show you how this really works. So this is your middle C on the piano, and all the notes to the right of it belong to the treble clef, and all the notes to the left of it belong to the bass clef. When we write this on the staff, you will see that there are two middle Cs. This is a C and this is a C. They both actually denote the same note on the piano, right? So this could be written towards the treble side or the bass side, because this is actually a common note between the two. Often some notes from the treble can also be written on the bass using something called the ledger lines. Can you hold, please tell us which note holded the frequency for? It's A above the middle C. This A above the middle C is 440 hertz. The A below the middle C is exactly half of it, which is 220. A below that is 110 and 55 and so on and so forth. That's how it works. So this is the middle C, and this could be written on the treble clef and on the bass clef, right? Depending on which instrument you're writing for. Obviously, the music is not always like a scale going up and down. It has musical shapes, right? So it's not going to be looking like this all the time. So next thing comes is the note value. So this is something called the whole note. Whole note. And when you divide this whole note into two parts, you get half notes. So whole note is the biggest time value of a note. That means this is the longest note that you typically play. There's another note which is longer than this, but which is very rarely used. Only in certain time signatures you will get to use that. So just to explain how the long notes, the whole note sounds, it is exactly 4 beats. So it will sound like. So you hold this note for 4 beats. Now the tempo of the beat is a separate issue, and we'll address that later. But when we divide this whole note into 2 equal halves, we get half notes like this. And similarly, we can divide each half note into 2 quarter notes, and 2 quarter notes into 8 notes, right? So in the time you play 1 quarter note, you can play 2 8 notes. In the time you play 1 half note, you can play 2 quarter notes and 4 8 notes. And the time you play 1 whole note, you can play 2 half notes, 4 quarter notes, or 8 8 notes. So the English names, the whole note, the half note, the quarter note, and the 8th note, these are all basically coming from the breakups of this note. This note is half of the whole note, quarter note is 1/4 of the whole note, and 8th note is 1/8 of the whole note. So how do they sound? Let me just play it at a little slower tempo for you. I'm going to play through these notes one by one. So this is the whole note. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the time I played 1 whole note, I can play 2 half notes like this. 2. And I can play 4 quarter notes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. and I can play eight notes like this. Whenever you teach theory to your students, it is absolutely important to connect it with the sound. If we learn theory only on paper, a lot of concepts actually don't get registered very well with the students. So it's always a great idea to use a guitar or a recorder or a piano or any instrument just to show these things practically of how they work really. So I'll move on. One thing that often does not get discussed in a lot of theory books is the parts of the notes. So you can see that all these notes look very different, and depending on how they look, the time value changes. Like this is, these circles are called the note heads, right? Now this is a white note head, this is a black note head. If it is only a white note head and it doesn't have the stick attached to it, it is a whole note and it is for 4 count. The moment we have the stem attached to it, it becomes a half note. And if we attach the stem to a black note head, it becomes a quarter note. We can then attach this flag or a tail to make it into an 8th note, a single 8th note. And when we have 2 8th notes written in the same beat, they are typically joined by a beam, like this, right? So this is 2 8th notes. Instead of having 2 separate flags or tails, they're joined by a beam. And this is typically done when these both notes are belonging to the same beat in music. I hope these concepts are clear. So this is a short musical passage, even if you're brand new to this whole concept, but I think you will understand a lot about it by the end of this session. So there are a couple of things. Now we have already studied that this set of 5 lines is called a staff. This is called treble clef. This is called a sharp sign, and sharp, flat, and naturals is something I'm going to discuss a little later. But these numbers are particularly very important. These are called the time signatures, and they basically give you information about the beat cycle. So the beat cycle is how many beats are there in each bar or measure. So what is a bar? So these lines are called the bar lines, and you will find a bar line always just before the first beat. So because this is 2 beats in a bar, this is the first beat and this is the second beat. The space between the 2 bar lines is called the bar or a measure. So this will be counted as 1, 2, and after the bar line we again come back to 1, 2, again a bar line, this is 1, 2, and this is the bar line, again 1 and 2, right? Now this is a whole note, half note, which is for 2 counts. Sorry, I have a message, let me just see. Why do we use the beam? I found 2 8th notes with the tail even if they have the same beat. Is that true? I'm going to discuss this grouping of notes a little ahead, Aditya, so you will see what they are. So this is a note for 2 counts, so in 1 bar you can only accommodate 1 half note. But since these are 2 8th notes and together they make 1 beat, this is 1 and this is a quarter note which is also for 1 beat. 1 plus 1 is 2 beats. So your beat cycle is 2 beats, and after every second beat the first beat returns. If similarly your beat cycle was 3 beats, there would be 1, 2, 3 and then the 1. So each bar will contain 3 beats in that case, right? The most commonly used time signature is 4/4. So coming to the book, first thing they teach you is how to write the notes, draw the notes. So they're given a note here. You have to just copy it on the right? It is, copying is a very important part of learning music, and you will see why a little later. I'll just explain this in the next slide. So this is the middle C, which is written on the short line, and this line is called the ledger line, right? So the short line is written slightly above the staff, and you write the C note on it. This is the B note, so you write the B note. And you can see that some stems are coming down and some of them are going up. So there's a little rule to it, which I think you should really understand and explain it in a simple format like this to the students. If your note looks like a P or a D, these are correct. If it looks like a 9 or a 6, these are wrong. Stem always comes down from the left and goes up from the right? So the next question is, why do some stems go up and why do some of the stems come down? So we have set of 5 lines. So the middle line is the deciding line really for the direction of the stem. If the note is written below the middle line, the stem will go up like this, like this. This is just below the middle line and the stem is going up from the right. And whenever the note is written on the middle line or above it, the stem comes down from the left. There are some exceptions to these rules, and the more you go into the deeper into theory, you realize there are always exceptions. So the exceptions are there, and that's the rule of majority, which I will discuss a little later, I think in grade 2 theory or something. You will see why certain stems move up and why some go down. So here they have asked you to write single 8 notes. Also pay attention that this kind of curvy line is not easy to make. So let me make a big note here. So when I make the line like this, sorry, let me make a straight line. And when I make it like this, it's quite tedious, right? And God forbid, if you have to write a 16th or a 32nd note like this, that's going to be quite tedious. So the best way to do it is make a note head, make a stem, and make a straight line like this for an 8th note. Mind you, the flag always goes to the right and it is tilted towards the note head. So when you have a note head, you have the stem, the flag is tilted always to the right and towards the note head. So this is the right way of writing this. What would be wrong is stem coming down from the left and the flag going left. That is wrong. Similarly, going up and coming to the left, that is also wrong way of doing it. Let's move on. Next is copy these 8 notes on the left into the empty staff on the right? So you can see these are 4 notes again, and you will write it exactly the same way, single 8 notes, right? So we have a pair of 2 8 notes here, so you'll copy it exactly like this. Please keep in mind when you're teaching this to your students that when you have, say, notes going up, I'm purposely using a different note. Sometimes what they do is they just make the stems like this and make the beam exactly parallel to the staff, which is not really visible. So even if you write 2 notes exactly in the same space, it is advisable that you make one stem slightly longer or shorter than the other. So the beam is always tilted when you write it by hand. In print, obviously the beam is much thicker than the staff line, so you can easily make out. But it is always advisable that you give a slight angle to the beam always, so we can see that these are quavers. So ideally this should have gone a little longer and it should have been a tilted beam like that. Now here you have these repeat signs. For now, just copy it. Don't think about what these are. These will be explained obviously in the course of the theory that we will study. But there is an important rule of the note spacing to be learned. And this is one reason why you should always encourage your students to copy the music. All the copying exercises, they should really do well. So what I would recommend is, let me give you an idea. So I will write you a 2-4, a bar of 2-4, right? And you will see that this will technically be correct, but it will feel a little awkward when you look at it. Right? It doesn't feel correct. There's something wrong about it. The right way to do this would have been, sorry for the long line, and we have 2 8 notes and 1 quarter note like this. Now this feels much better because the longer note has been left much bigger space after it, and the shorter notes have shorter space after it. So the space you leave after a note also kind of hints at the time value of that note, how long that note is. Shorter notes will have shorter space after them, and a long note will have a very long space after it. So when they learn to copy this music, now this is called the rules of note spacing, and you will rarely find this in any book. I don't even remember which book I studied this from. But a lot of the books will actually not discuss this, and actually it's not meant to be discussed. It is something that you learn very intuitively, right? So this one is a half note. Tell your students to write exactly below it. So you make the half note exactly below it, and then you write the quarter note exactly below it, and so on and so forth. So you will automatically learn how much space to leave after which note. That's a very good exercise to do. So please don't tell your students to never shy away from copying music. That's something that they're learning from it. Next thing we come to is accidentals. Now accidentals is another thing that I need to explain with a physical demonstration. So why are they called the accidentals? Now we all know possibly that the sharp, flat and the natural signs are called the accidentals, but why are they called the accidentals? So let's take a scale, and we take a scale of C major in this case. Right, let me just play to the left hand. Right. Now if I throw in a note that does not belong to the scale, and this note sounds quite like an accident, isn't it? So every time you introduce a note that is not in the scale, and your ears get used to a particular sound of a scale after it's played for a little while. So the moment you use a note that is outside the key, it sounds like an accident, and that is the reason why these are called the accidentals. So coming back to it, this is a flat sign. which lowers a note by a semitone. I'm going to explain what sharp, flat, and natural signs do in a bit. This is a natural sign, so you have to make it on this. Mind you that when you say write a note on, say, a space like this, the sharp has to highlight the exact same space like this. And if you write a note on the line, sharp has to highlight this exact same line. Right? So this is the best way of doing it. If you suppose write a note on the line, right, and you put a sharp somewhere else above it, right? So that is wrong. And like teaching theory is always a little difficult task. So you have to involve a bit of humor when you're teaching this. I always call these things UFOs, the unidentified flying objects, which is quite, kids find it quite funny. So they have to learn to make the treble, the sharp, flat, and the natural signs exactly in front of the note head, highlighting the same line or space on which the note is given. So simply you have to just copy these things as you've seen. Some students have a habit of making a very small, so they make a proper note and they'll make a sharp looking like this, like somebody squashed a mosquito there, right? So you have to tell them that the sharp signs, flat signs, natural signs, they are actually as big as a note. And they look different because they look slightly smaller. That's an illusion really, because they're written in front of the note head and not exactly measuring with the note head. But if you measure them, they will actually be the same length. So do encourage them to make a nice big one, but not bigger than highlighting one space or line. If they make a sharp looking like this, I don't know which note they're trying to highlight. This is covered two spaces and a line. So just some teaching tips that you can use, right? So the beam can be straight line or tilted, both. Ideally it is tilted depending on the piece where the note head lies. It is actually depending on where the note head is. But if you have the note heads like this, your stem will be typically at least 3 spaces long and you will tilt it like that. The problem typically happens when they write 2 note heads exactly in the same space, right? And this is the worry that if you make your line exactly parallel to the staff line, the beam may not be visible. So advisable would be just to make one stem slightly longer and then beam it slightly tilted. Sorry, my digital pen is not very accurate with writing stuff, but you get the idea of it, right? Slightly tilted is always better. So copy the musical passage in the staff on the left into the empty staff on the right. So again, this is copying business, so you should copy it exactly the way it is given. These are the repeat signs again, and this will be explained a little later. Now, this is still the prelim section going on, writing time signatures, so you have to just copy it, 4/4. Don't worry about explaining the G major scale yet. All of these things will actually be explained in the music harmony part, the popular music harmony part a little ahead. So this is a G major scale. You have the 1 sharp, 4/4. Just copy it, right? Just copy it to the right. Circle around the time signature. So you need to identify where the time signature is. That is the concept which is being taught. You circle around it and then you copy it. Please always encourage your students to read the question carefully. A lot of them will just copy it and just leave it at that. And I know it's not a big mistake by not circling the treble clef, and you will also tick it. But if they do this in the exam, they will lose marks for it because they have not followed the instruction in the question. Now we come to the music notation part of it, and this is 20% weightage of the whole exam. So they're not giving a whole lot of emphasis on how to write music. It is important and we are addressing it, but that's only 20% of it. 25% will be the popular music harmony, then another 25% is the band knowledge, and the final band analysis, which is basically just bringing everything together, is going to be 30% of the weightage. So going on to the music notation part of it, first thing we learn to write is bar lines. So by this time they've understood that there are 4 beats in every bar when they see 4/4. So you need to put counts on how many beats is each of these notes worth. So this is 2 counts, this is 1 count, and this is total of 1 count. So 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. You make the bar line like this, almost like this. So please make sure that they start their bar line on the 5th line and finish it on the 1st line. Some kids might just make bar lines looking like this, and that's not the right way of doing it. So after every 4 beats, you need to make a bar line. 4 8 notes is total of 2 quarter notes, so this is 2 beats worth. This is 1 beat and this is 1 beat, so if you add this up, it's 4 beats, and this is how it goes. And the last note is 4 counts, so that's the bar line there. Similarly, you have to make the bar lines here. Please be careful. This is a 3/4, so after every 3 beats, you need to make a bar line, and so on and so forth. Please put it in the message if I need to go slower, or if you're understanding everything clearly. If there's any doubt, please do post. Moving on, adding time signatures. Now they're given the bar lines, and you need to identify what the time signature is. For the time being, for the debut grade, your bottom number is always going to be 4. What these bottom numbers mean and how they give you the time value of 1 beat is something that I'll explain a little later as the concepts progress. So the easiest way to do this question, obviously you can just count the first bar and say this is 2 beats and this is 4 8 notes so together of 2 beats, so 2 plus 2 is 4, so the top number is going to be 4. The easiest way to do it, and these kind of tricks can save some time in the exam, although you're never squeezed for time. This one note here is for 4 beats, and that's the only note in the whole bar. So that's clearly a 4/4. You cannot have one bar with 4 beats and another bar with less than or more than 4 beats. If the time signature is 4/4 and it has not changed through the passage, each bar will always contain 4 beats. Similarly, next one is add the correct time signature. So you can see this is 2 plus 1, 3. So that's the easiest thing to do, 3, 4. Right? Similarly, you can do the next. Now they're given the time signature, they're given the bar lines, and they're saying that there's some notes which are missing and you need to write one note to complete the bar. So this is 3 beats and this is 2 beats worth. So 1 beat is missing, so I would put a quarter note like this. Similarly, you can see these are 2 8 notes, that is 1 beat in total, and 2 beats are missing, so I will easily put a half note. Here you can see there's 1 8 note given, and so 1 8 note is given, so this first beat is incomplete, all right. This together is 1 beat and this is 1 beat, and this is obviously half a beat. So 2.5 beats are given, half beat missing. You can just put an 8th note like this, right? Now in this case, they're given 2 question marks. So you can write 2 quarter notes in this case. That is absolutely fine, so on and so forth. So it's just plain simple maths. So now we come to the beams, and somebody was asking me, like, how do we beams and why do we beam certain notes and why not certain notes? And this is a concept which is really important to understand for this. Now in 2/4, when there are 4 8 notes given there, we typically beam them all together. There's no problem. In 3/4, we beam all of them together, 6 of them together. So why do we do that? Why can't we break in 3 and 3 or 2 plus 2 in this case? So the concept is basically around the strong beats and the weak beats. In 2/4, there is 1 strong beat and 1 weak beat. So the notes falling from the strong beat to the weak beat can always be beamed together. There is no problem with that. In 3/4, you will see that there is 1 strong beat and there are 2 beats following it. So strong to weak and weak to weak, you can beam all of the notes together. There's no problem. Yes, you can use the 2 8 notes in the first. 4/4, this is, now 4/4 is unique because it has 2 strong beats. This is strong, this is weak, strong, weak. Strong to weak, you can beam together. Weak to strong, you cannot beam together. So what this means is that you have to treat a bar of 4/4 almost like a 2 bars of 2/4. So you have to separate this. And this is called the rule of imaginary bar line. So you are almost treating this as 2 bars of 2/4, but there is no bar line in the middle. But you always separate the weak and the strong beat. As I said earlier, there are always exceptions to these rules. So you will see what the exceptions are a little later. So the rest, you will always separate them, and a longer note starting on the second beat or even on the first beat can be written over this imaginary bar line. But this, when you're beaming 8 notes, is always kept like this, right? We will see this in the next example here. This is 4/4. So first, second, third, fourth, right? These are the beats, third beat and the fourth beat. Since this is the strong beat and the weak beat, you can beam all of these together. There's no problem, right? But here they have given the first beat. Second beat is a quarter note, so you obviously can never beam a quarter note with anything because it will no longer be a quarter note. Third beat as it is, so there's no problem. In this case, you can see there are 6 quavers given here. So this is the first 2 beats which can be beamed together, and these 2 will be beamed together. You will not beam the 6 of them together, and you will certainly not beam 2 plus 4. That will be wrong. 4 and 2. Because this is the strong beat, it will always start a fresh beam here. In this particular example, you have a quaver. You have followed it by a quarter note. right? So this will stay as it is. Another quaver, and so you can see there are three eighth notes here. They are also called the quavers in Italian. And since I've been teaching classical music for a long time, I also always use those terminologies also. This is three eighth notes, so you cannot put one single beam across for them because this quiver belongs to the second beat. These are the first two beats. This is the third beat and this is the fourth beat, right? So this eighth note will stay alone and these two will be beamed together and this will also stay alone. This is how it works, right? So again, you have to rewrite this music on the right, and in this case you can see that they have given 4 eighth notes in the middle of the bar. So this is the first beat, this is the second beat, this is the third beat, this is the fourth beat, right? You will always keep the second and the third separate because this is the strong beat, weak beat, strong beat, weak beat. Weak to strong, we will always keep it separate. I hope I've made myself clear with that. So this is the rules as of now for simple time signatures, which is 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. More rules will come in as we get to the more variety of time signatures with the bottom numbers 2 or 8 and things like that. So again, those are topics that will be further discussed in the further grades. Going on, add together the values of on the notes on the left and write one single note for the same total value on the right. So there are 2 eighth notes here. Together, they are worth 1 beat, and the note for 1 beat is going to be a quarter note. Please encourage your students to write their answers exactly on the same line of space as the given questions because it becomes a little tedious for the teachers to check it. So these 2 quarter notes, you can use 1 half note, 2 eighth notes and a quarter note. Together they will be 2 beats, and so on and so forth. You have to just write one single note on the right for the same time value. Now these are the notes in the rests, right? So this is a rest for the eighth note, which looks like this. So you have to write one eighth note, and it is again advisable to write all your answers in the third space as they have given in this. This is a note for 2 counts, and the rest for 2 counts is always written in here, always sitting on the middle line. So the rest for 2 beats is always sitting on the middle line, and the rest for half note is always hanging from the 4th line like this. So sitting on the middle line, hanging from the 4th line. They look very similar and it's very easy to get confused with the two. So when you're explaining it to your students, you can always say, this is sitting on the middle line and hanging from the 4th line, always. It is not hanging from the 3rd line or the 5th line, it's always from the 4th line. So the rests have a particular space. Because these are not relevant to particular pitches, this basically means rest. That means there is no sound to be produced. This rest always starts in the 3rd space and finishes on the, if you're writing it by hand, you can also finish it in the 1st space. And the rest, which is this one, this is the tedious one to make. This is a quarter note rest. So you will write one quarter note value for it. So this is the tedious to write. So let me just quickly explain how this really is written. So this is a short line, longer line, and a medium line with a C. Short, long, medium, C. This is how you write it. Some people tend to write it as her in Hindi. That is the wrong way of writing it. This is how it is. Short, long, medium, C. Right? So that will help. Alternatively, if you're teaching young kids and they don't know how to make the short, long, medium kind of a business, no problem. Tell them to make a lightning sign and put a C below it. Easy way to explain. Naming the notes. So you just have to name the notes, and just to how to identify these notes. So let me give you some tip on sight reading here. That to be able to sight read music fluently, your first need is to be able to recognize the pitches very quickly. How to do that obviously is reading your music, progressing through the earlier method books, going up to the grade books at the highest level. That is definitely one way of building it. But now with the use of technology, we have a lot of processes available with us. So one app that I can recommend is called the Music Tutor. Music Tutor, it's called. And that allows you to separate the treble clef and the bass clef, whether you want the externals on them or not, what range of notes do you want to practice. All of those options are there in the options, and it's a free app. There's also a paid version of it, but I don't think there's anything new functionally added to it. They'll only remove the ads. So you can recommend that app to your students, and they can just select the treble clef, only the notes within the staff range, right? And the notes will pop up and their names given at the bottom. So they have to just tap the names. You have a choice of even looking at a keyboard or just the note names. For the guitar players and other instrumentalists, it is just better to use the note names. So that will definitely speed up your note recognition. And another tip I will give you is that whenever you see a piece of music, let me go back a little. So when you see a piece of music like this, you should put your metronome to a slower speed and speak one note name on every click. All right, and irrespective of what is the time value of that note. So you don't have to speak this note name and wait for 2 beats. You will go G, F, A, G, D, E, D, C, so on and so forth. And that is a good way of doing it. And if you think that you're running out of material, you can always turn the book upside down and go to the next section of it. So this is naming the note section. So you can use this app to learn these notes faster. You obviously have to name them. This is a C, this is an F sharp. And the time you take to recognize these notes is very crucial. So, and accuracy is equally crucial. So this is a B flat, so on and so forth. So mixing it up with the treble and bass is a great idea. There are a lot of early level method books available that you can use to practice these notes as well. So what are sharps and flats? So first let's just look at how the notes are named on the keyboard. So we have a group of 2 black keys and 3 black keys. The white key before the 2 black keys is called the C. Then there's D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So you can see this is A to G, which is looped over and over again. And that's how the keyboard works. So before this is C, there would have been a B and an A below it, and so on and so forth, right? So this is how the notes are named. Now this is how the notes are named for the white keys or the natural notes. These black keys here, they have no names of their own. So they borrow their names from the note before or after it. So suppose if this key borrows the name from the note before it, it will be called the F sharp. And if it borrows the name from the note after it, it will be called a G flat. So sharp raises the pitch by a semitone and flat lowers the pitch by a semitone. What are tones and semitones? Let me just quickly explain that as well. So this is a C note, D, E, F. Now between E and F, you see that we don't have a black key in the middle. So these 2 pitches are right next to each other. So the shortest gap between 2 pitches is called a semitone, right? Semi means half. So if this is half of a tone, 2 semitones will make one tone. So C to C sharp is one semitone. C sharp to D is another semitone. And C to D is a tone, right? So similarly, from any note, you can see which is a semitone above it and a tone above it. For example, if this note, if I call it an E flat or a D sharp, whichever the note is, the semitone above is going to be E natural, and the tone above this note is going to be F. So this is how it works. These tones and semitones are very instrumental in creating scales, and we will study that just in a while. Just to give you some more idea of it, this is the C note, this is the D note. If this note has to take its name from the note before it, it will be called a C sharp. And if it has to take its name from the note following it, it will be called a D flat, right? So this is how the sharps and the flats work. Now, you have to draw a circle around the highest pitch in each bar, right? So you have been given 2 notes. This is E natural and this is an E flat. Just to quickly show you, this is E natural and this is E flat. So E natural is obviously a higher pitch, that means higher frequency, so you would just circle this. This is F sharp and F natural. The sharp is the higher note. Let me again show you this. This is F natural and this is F sharp. So F sharp is a higher pitch, so we will just go back and circle the F sharp here. Similarly, we have treble. This is D and a D sharp. D and a D sharp. So the high pitch is going to be D sharp in this case. This is an E flat and E natural. E natural is going to be a higher one. Again, please read the questions carefully. Now we're talking about the lowest pitch, not the highest pitch. So between these two notes, F and F sharp, the lower pitch is F natural. Between E natural and E flat is the lower pitch. So again, now this is the higher pitch. So please read the questions, and if you've understood the concept of tones and semitones, you will easily be able to do this exercise. Now here they are asking you to put the correct clef to the beginning of the staff below so that the scale named and the notes beneath make sense. Now this is the C major scale. That means it has to start and end on the C note, right? On which clef would this note be a C? It will be a treble clef. So you need to make a treble clef here. Excuse my handwriting here. Digital pen is not very easy. This is G major scale and you have an F sharp. This note is G on the bass clef, so you would make a bass clef here. Identifying the chords. Now chords, let me just quickly explain what chords are. Chords are a group of notes played together. So there are chords just made of two notes, known as the power chords. There are three notes called the triads, and there are more than three notes which are called the seventh chords or the ninth chords, and so on and so forth. So group of notes played together really is a chord. And what chord is something that we will again study a little later in this study. So let's take a G major scale. If I take the first, third and the fifth note, that gives you the G major chord or the tonic chord in the scale. The starting note of a scale is called the tonic. And if you take the first, third and the fifth note together, they make the tonic chord, right? So the exercise that we have at hand is asking us to circle the notes of the G major chord. So you have to find these three notes, G, B and D. Let me just put them here, G, B and D in sequence, one after the other. Now if you read through this exercise, that's going to be again a good exercise of note recognition. G, G, F sharp, E, D, B, G, sorry, A, like that. But here you see G, B and D are right next to each other. So this is where you would make your circle. Similarly, you need to identify the C major chord because the key is C major. G major always has an F sharp in it, and I'm going to explain that in a bit. So C major has no sharps or flats, so you have to look for C, E, and G. And here are your three notes, C, E, G, right? They could be in descending order also, but this is W grade, so they are giving you the easy way out, always giving you the predictable answers really. Similarly, you have to do it again for the G major in the bass clef this time. Kindly be careful about which clef you're reading on. Very common mistakes students make. They think that this is treble clef and they say, sorry sir, this is the wrong question. So please read the clef signs very carefully. Next concept we come to is intervals. Now again, this will take some demo from me. What is an interval? Interval is basically a pitch gap between two notes. So this is one pitch and this is another pitch, right? So C to E is an interval of a third. Why is it a third? If I start from C, this is 1 and 2, so it should really be a second. Why is it called a third? And a lot of teachers fail to answer that question clearly for the students. So how I say it is that this C to the same note C again is not a zero interval. It is called the unison, which is also the first interval. C to C sharp is some kind of a unison interval. It is called the augmented unison. C to C flat is called the diminished unison. All these technical terms and the meanings is something that I will explain in future sessions. But basically what you need to know is that if we have two notes written next to each other and they both are the same notes, the interval is not 0, it is 1. C to D is a second, C to E is a third, C to F is a fourth, C to G is a fifth, so on and so forth. So let me quickly write some notes for you. Excuse me. So let's put some note names, C, D, E, F, and G, right? So best way to do it is number the first note, your starting note, as 1, whatever that note is, just number it 1, right? So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, and this is 5, right? So these are the numbers of those notes. Any kind of a C to any kind of a D is going to be some kind of a second. Any kind of a C to any kind of an E is going to be some kind of a third. F to G, C to G is always a fifth, right? So whatever the notes are, number the starting note as 1. So let's just number a few of these intervals. C to G. C is 1. I just explained this is a fifth, right? This is C to an F. C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4. And C to C above is an eighth. Now you must be wondering, hey, how did you figure out this is an octave so quickly? So there's a trick to this. Whenever you have a note given on the line, the third, fifth, seventh, all the odd intervals are always going to be on the line within an octave, right? And all the even intervals are going to be in the opposite side of it. If your given note is in the line, all the even intervals will be in the spaces, and all the odd intervals will be on the lines within an octave. If you go over an octave, it might just change, right? So I saw that this is a wide gap, approximately an eighth, and I see that the given note is on the line and the higher note is in the space. So this is an eighth. Obviously, with practice, you get very comfortable with this thing. This is a sixth, this is a seventh, and at a glance, you will be able to figure out. For now, this is a G note. G will be counted as 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is 4, D is 5, E is 6. So this is interval of a 6. Let's move on. So what are harmonic intervals? Let me again get back to the piano. When two notes are played after one another, like this, these are called the melodic intervals, because in a melody, typically we only sing one note at a time. We can only sing only one note at a time. So if I'm singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, I'm singing only one note at a time, and these are all melodic intervals. These are all melodic intervals, right? Harmonic intervals are when we sound two notes together, like this. Right? These are harmonic intervals. So in this question, you have to write the harmonic intervals. So you have been given one note, and you need to write another note of this interval above it, right? So this is a C note. The note above it is going to be an F. So that's going to be just above the staff, like this. Thank you. I will take a little slow. So this is the sixth interval. This is in the space, the second space. And the sixth interval is going to be, this is 1, 2 is going to be on the line, 3 is in the space, 4 is on the line, 5 is in the space, and 6 is again on the line. So that is an interval of a sixth. Octave is going to be an eighth, like this. Second is a tedious one, because you cannot write the note exactly above it, because that will just kind of, you can't read anything, it just becomes a blotch. Doesn't work. So we have to write the note touching it to its right, like this. Something like this, right? It has to touch the note and it's written to the right. When we have to put a stem to this note, suppose this is a quarter note, the stem is exactly put in the middle of it, right? Let me make this going up like that. Seventh interval, again, odd interval is going to be on the line. So third line, fifth, and this is the seventh. So third line above it is going to be my seventh interval, like that. Similarly, you have to just name the intervals. At this stage, it doesn't matter if you're writing on the treble clef or the bass clef, right? You need to be aware of the note name. But if I had thought that this is a treble clef and took this note as E, my seventh interval will still be this note on this line, right? So you're not naming the notes really. You have to just identify the interval. Now, the tempo directions, 110. This is called the BPM. BPM is beats per minute, right? So write the rhythmic value, what rhythmic value is referred by in the tempo marking, and the rhythmic values are always the beat values. So bottom number here is 4, and I think it's a good time to explain what the bottom number really does. So if you have 4/4 as your time signature, bottom number 4 really means that 1/4 of a whole note, which is, let me just put it in, like a whole note like this, that's your whole note, will get one beat. And quarter of a whole note is obviously a quarter note, which is this. Hence, there should be 110 quarter note beats in a minute. That's exactly the sentence that you will write. 110 quarter note beats in a minute. Not 110 quarter notes in a minute. That would mean that your music is only using quarter notes. It will have different rhythmic values used, longer notes, shorter notes, but that is basically what this really means. So what rhythmic value? It's a quarter note which is getting 1 beat. Explain the tempo with a brief sentence. 110 quarter note beats in a minute. So here they're asking, what does the BPM stand for, right? So this is beats per minute. And whenever you're writing answers in your sample papers or even in your exam, encourage your students to write the full form of BPM and not just mention 110 BPM, right? BPM is a short, so they should elaborate and say beats per minute. So that's a very clear answer, and the examiner understands that you understand the meaning of BPM also, and you're not just copying what you have been seeing for a while. How do we know which rhythmic value is being referred to in the tempo marking? As I just explained, it's the lower number, so it is based on the lower number in the time signature, right? You certainly cannot choose your own rhythmic values, right? Now we enter the second section of this, which is basically popular music harmony. So we have done the music notation part, now we are in the harmony part. Harmony is where we study the construction of scales and arpeggios and chords and all of those things. So the first thing we start with is the tones and semitones, which I've already explained. So you have to just put in this box if the gap between the above two notes is a tone or a semitone, right? So this is a C note, this is a D note, and this is a tone. This is a D and E, this is also a tone. This is E and F, that is a semitone. F and G, that's a tone. Similarly, this is going to be a tone, tone, semitone. Sorry, I'm writing outside the boxes because the box is just not big enough for me to write in. So this is the, if you arrange the notes starting on any note in this order of tones and semitones, you get a major scale, right? Rudrajit, that is correct if your time signature is 4/4 or anything with the bottom number 4. As of now, that is correct. But when the bottom number changes, this concept also changes, evolves with it. So I will explain these things in the future sessions when I address further theory grades, right? So looking at construction of a scale, let me just go to the piano again and show you how this really works. So let's take a note, say a G note, and a tone above G is going to be A, another tone above is B, now we need a semitone, another tone D, another tone E, another tone which is F sharp, and a semitone which is G, right? So this is a G major scale. It is a G major scale because I followed the order of tones and semitones as we just discussed, which is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. It completely changes if I even make one adjustment to it. Suppose instead of a semitone between the 7th and the 8th, I put it between, 6th and the 7th and the 8th, I put it between the 6th and the 7th. So we have starting note G, tone, tone, semitone, tone, and we have a semitone tone here and a semitone and a tone. Now that completely changes the sound of the scale. This is not a major scale anymore. This is something called the Mixolydian mode. Again, modes is something that will be discussed in further lessons. So going back to the book. So we have, again, given a sharp, that means this note is an F sharp. And then you have to just identify the formula, like not the formula, but which notes are tones apart and which notes are semitones apart, and so on and so forth, right? Just keep in mind that when you are explaining this concept to students, and I'm just going to overwrite a little bit here. Suppose you are given a starting note as C, right? So typically we say, okay, from here we need to go a tone, then we need to go a tone, and so on and so forth. Please make sure that you don't write the tones and semitones exactly above the note names while you're explaining, because they get confused about this is tone from the previous note or from the next note, or what's happening here. It is best to write it between the two notes. So a tone above D is going to be E. If you see a T written above the D, then it gets confusing of what are we talking about here, right? So just a little tip to help you teach this better. Yeah, there's some issue with that. So using whole notes, write one octave ascending scale of G. Use the key signature. I have no sharps or flats here, and I have a time signature of 4/4, right? That means wherever I write the notes on this whole stuff, they're all going to be belonging to the scale of C major. If I put a sharp here, which is an F sharp, sorry, I'm on the bass clef, so F sharp will be on the 4th line, right? Whichever F I write, suppose I write F here, or I write the F above the staff here, they will all be F sharps, right? This is slightly different than when we write an accidental. Suppose we have the time signature of 4/4 and I put a sharp to this F note here, right? If I write another F after it on the same line, this will stay an F sharp. But if I write F anywhere else, this will be F natural. And this is also an F sharp. And this accidentals only last till the bar line. Again, a lot of concepts. This will be explained a little later as we move on. So please don't worry about it so much. For the timing, you have to write the G major scale 1 octave ascending. Ascending, again, we are reading always from left to right. So the notes have to climb up the staff. So it will start on the G below. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. So you'll put a sharp here and a G. Encourage your students to leave a good space between the notes and not cramp up their answer in just like 2 inches of space. So please use the whole space. This is descending, and often students write the same scale and say, "Sir, this is descending." Well, it's descending if you read from right to left. Descending means going up high pitches to the lower pitches when you read left to right. So that's a common confusion with the students. So you have to just write the G major scale. Here again, the F sharp is going to be the second note of the scale. Something like this. And this is another common mistake that students make, using whole notes, right? So often they would write this because they have been seeing only the black note heads without the stem, just for the purpose of explaining the pitches earlier in the book. So they would just end up writing the note heads like that. That is going to be a wrong answer because this is not a whole note. You need to make oval circles like this to write your whole notes. Move on. Using the key signature as given. So they're given the key signature. Looking at the key signature, you should figure out by now that 1 sharp is the scale of G major and no sharps and flats is the scale of C major. You need to just write the scales ascending and descending as the scale may be. Applying application of the scale knowledge. You have to circle notes that don't belong to the scale of G major. So you would circle the C sharp and the D sharp because they don't belong. Put circle around any note that are not found in the key of C major. So you circle all the sharps and flats. At this point, let me also tell you, all major scales will always have a certain number of sharps, flats, or nothing at all, no sharps or flats at all, but they will never have a mix of sharps and flats. All major scales will never have a mix of sharps and flats. Either they will have sharps, either they will have flats, or they will have no sharps and flats. C major is the only scale which does not have any sharps and flats. Also, the key signature, what does the word signature mean? Something that is very unique to somebody. So let's treat each of the scales as a person, and each of these persons have a key signature to it. Right? It's their unique signature. So the key signature of F sharp is only there for the G major. There is no other scale that only has an F sharp in it. Sorry, Treble Clef, F sharp. That is only a G major scale. There is no other scale which only has an F sharp in it. If you go to the D major, it will have one more sharp. If you have C major, it will have no sharps and flats. And there is no other scale like this. So each of the scales, all the 12 notes that we have in music, each of these notes will have a unique number of sharps and flats attached to their scale. Write out the letter names with their accidentals if appropriate for the C major. So C major has no accidentals, so you just write that. One or more accidentals are missing in the scale of G major below. Please use underline and any incorrect notes and add their accidentals. So you'll first underline, and then add the accidental, which is a sharp. Please read the question before you answer it. If you don't underline it, you have not followed the 100% of the instruction. So somebody who does underline it will get full marks, and somebody who doesn't will lose a little. So similar questions based on the scales, right? Write out the letter names and circle the notes, which is not there. So what is an arpeggio? Let me explain an arpeggio. So this is the scale, right, of G major. Or let me take the C major, it's visible on your screen. We already discussed what is a scale and what is a chord. The first, third, and the fifth note together, they make a chord. If I have to play the notes of this chord and repeat the starting note on the top, which is the same note basically, This is called an arpeggio. There's a very slight difference between an arpeggio and a broken chord. Arpeggio is just straightaway going up. So if I'm playing this for 2 octaves, but the broken chord will go like this. So it has a pattern going up, whereas an arpeggio will straight go up all the chord tones and back again. So here you're asked to write, this is an ascending G major arpeggio. Add the correct clef, if appropriate, and a key signature. So in this case, this G note is G note on which clef? A treble clef. So I'll make a treble clef here. Well done with that. So you have to put a sharp here, which is an F sharp, because that is the key signature of G major. Similarly, this is descending C major. On which clef is this note a C? It's the bass clef. So I'll put the bass clef here. And I don't need to put the key signature because there is no key signature for C major because it only uses all the natural notes. Similarly, you would do the next one. Using whole notes, complete the staff below by adding the notes of 1 octave ascending C major arpeggio. So C major, you can start on the middle C, E, G, C. That's all. They've only asked for the ascending, not descending after it, so I would not come down. Can you please repeat the broken chord again? Yes, please. So this is a scale of C major, and this is the chord of C major. A broken chord is a pattern going up. So suppose my pattern is 1, 3, 5. Then I'm using the chord tones. So the chord tones are the notes of which the chord is made of. So C major is made of the chord tones C, E, and G. So I'll take this pattern. That's a broken chord. That's a broken chord. This is a pattern which is used in some of the classical grades. So this is also a broken chord. If you take a 4-note broken chord, that's a broken chord. But compared to an arpeggio, which will straight go up all the chord tones. Just to further explain it, chord tones, the broken chord will go up, then down, up, and down, up, and down, up, and down like that. That's the broken chord. Arpeggio will go straight up and straight down. Right? Thank you. Moving on. How many notes are needed to create a basic major chord? 3. C, E, and G in the key of C major, G, B, D in the key of G major. First, third, and the fifth note of a scale will give you the basic major chord. Circle the notes of the C major, write C, E, and G like that. Write out the letter names of the G major. I'm sure you will be able to do that now. Here you're given a key signature and you're given a couple of chords and you need to circle the chord, which is the tonic chord as per the given key signature, right? Finally, add the chord name on the line below the staff. So read the question carefully. First thing, I will circle the G major chord because the key signature is that of G major, and I will write G major below it. This is C major, so I have to look for the C note on the bass clef. So I'll circle that and put C major. Here you have to write the notes on the staff. Just read it as simple stuff, same way. Now we get to the next section, which is the band knowledge. The band knowledge is basically talking about different instruments. And this is something which is very different than the classical theory. Obviously, I've done my grade 8 classical theory, ABRSM, Trinity, and all those things, and I've taught this theory to that level. But even after having done my grade 8, I fortunately knew how to write for drums or bass or everything because I've also studied the Berklee College of Music theory when I got the scholarship way back 20 years back. So I studied all of those books and I got a lot of books for self-study, so I learned all of those things. But the classical harmony actually does not teach you any of those things. Even after doing your grade 8, you will not know how to write a simple groove for a drum kit. This theory actually dives into that straight away. So here are the parts of a drum kit, and you have to just write which letter corresponds to a particular part of the drum kit. So let me just quickly explain what the parts of the drum kit are. In this case, hi-hat is A, right? Which letters correspond to the snare drum? That's a B. Then we have the bass drum, which is F, so on and so forth. Going on, let me just name all the parts, and they have obviously described it. This is the hi-hat. It has a pedal attached to it, to opening and closing this thing. This is a snare drum, which sits between the knees of a drummer. This is the bass drum, which has a pedal to it. First tone, second tone, floor tone, right cymbal, and a crash cymbal, right? Cymbal with a C, by the way. So here, which statement above describes best the snare drum? Snare drum, in a standard kit, it is always positioned between the drummer's knees. So C is the snare drum. I'm sure you will be able to read this and answer the questions below. Going forward, the bass drum produces the lowest sound of any drum in the drum kit. That is true. So you need to understand the snare drum and the bass drums are joined together, false. As you can see, the snare drum and bass drum are sitting separate. The hi-hat has a pedal at the bottom of the stand. Yes, it does. So that is also true. And one thing, very fruitful and a very useful feedback that I got from one of the teachers who shifted to Rockschool theory after teaching other boards for a long time, other classical boards for a long time, is that suddenly his students got interested in the other instruments that were being offered. So the pianists got interested in drummers. They were going and discussing how to use the right cymbal, where do you use the crash cymbal, and how it works really. And the drummers were coming and talking to the pianists and discussing about, hey, what is the scale? Can you please show it, play it to me and show me? I read it in the book, but I want to hear the sound of an augmented chord or things like that. In the guidebook, you have a lot of information given about these chords, but most importantly, you have also been given some practical references. So there are songs listed. If you listen to the songs, they will tell you that this particular song starts with augmented chord. So you get a, like, Oh Darling by Beatles starts with an augmented chord. You will immediately know what an augmented chord is when you hear the song, right? So here is guitar. Now we are identifying the guitars. I'm sure a lot of you are guitar players, but those of you who are not, you will learn a lot of new things. This is an acoustic guitar. This is a bass guitar. So how many strings are there in an acoustic guitar? 6 strings, obviously. Bass guitar has 4 strings, things like that. Instrument on the image is a guitar or bass guitar. That's a guitar. And is this a bass guitar? Yes, it is. Is this a guitar? It is a guitar. It's not a bass guitar. This is a hollow body electric guitar, and that's a hollow body acoustic guitar. All those further details you learn in the further grades. This is again about the keyboard. They're not colored the black notes in purpose because that's what you need to identify by the position of it. So the black keys are slightly risen above the white keys, and they are smaller than the white keys. So you have to identify, are there more keys, which are there more of on a piano keyboard, white keys or black keys? Definitely white keys. For every 7 white keys, there are 5 black keys. One set of keys is raised, that's the black keys. Diagram on the right has an X. Is that a white key or a black key? Obviously it's a white key. You can do that. So this is just identifying C, F sharp, B flat, which are white keys, which are black keys, and things like that, which I've already explained in the previous section, so you will be able to do this. Then we come to the voice. Again, very basics. We are not discussing the trachea and the oesophagus and all of those things right now. It's just the mouth, the vocal cords, the breathing pipe, and the lungs. So we're just talking about the lungs and the mouth in this parade, really. So which letter points at the mouth? That's the A. Obviously, lungs is D. Singing needs control of airflow through the lungs. Yes. By changing the shape of the mouth, singers can change the sound. Yes. The main function of the lungs is to allow helium into the body. I will leave that for you to figure out. Which term is used to describe the air being non-pitched percussions like timbales and guiro and all of those things? Drum kit is one instrument, one type of a percussion instrument, really. So we are writing it on the percussion clef, and these are the notes. You can see this X-shaped note heads are written for the hi-hat. This is the bass drum, and this is the snare. If you refer to the guidebook of the grade 1, grade debut to grade 5 guidebook, that will cover all of these things in detail. So all of this information is given there. Notation and techniques. So which part of the drum kit is notated with X-shaped note heads? That's the hi-hat. On which beat does the snare drum play? This is playing on the second beat. On which beat does the bass drum play? The first and the third. So you take both, 1 and the 3. In which directions does the hi-hat stem go? They always go up. So it's how many times is the hi-hat being played? You can see there are 4 of those, so it's 4 times. Similarly, you have questions based on the musical extracts. I'm not going to answer all the questions, but it's pretty simple stuff from here on. notation technique for the bass in the guitar. Now this is an important one. In guitar notation, the notes are written at the pitch they sound. The guitar notation is written one octave higher than it sounds, or the notes played on the guitar sound one octave higher than they are written. Now, a lot of us may know that the classical guitar, we write the music one octave higher than it sounds, which is the B option here. But actually, all guitars are written like that, right? So the B is the correct answer for this. And there's a very good reason for it. If we write the pitches, suppose I'll just make the treble clef here, a very big one. Right, let me make that again. So this is my middle C, right, which is the 3rd fret on the 5th string on the guitar. And the lowest note that we write for the guitar is this E. But actually the E which is sounded is an octave below, which will be quite a task. So it's much easier to actually just stick to one clef, makes the reading much easier. That's why all the music for the guitar, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, classical guitar, is written one octave higher than it sounds, right? In the first half of the bar labeled A is the guitar playing a melody of the chords. Melody is obviously melodic intervals, you can see. This is a melodic interval going up, coming down, and these are harmonic intervals stacked one on top of the other, which are chords. So this is the melody, those are the chords, and you can easily answer that question now. The following questions relate to the 1-bar extract of the bass guitar notation on the right. So we have single notes playing, so you have to just take which one it is. The bass guitar is strumming chords, it is not. The bass guitar starts playing the melody on the beat 2. And the bass guitar is playing single notes throughout. Bass guitar is playing single notes throughout. That's the correct answer, right? The following 4 questions relate to 1-bar extract of the piano keyboard on the right. So you have to just mention which hand is playing. The treble clef is obviously for the right hand, and the bass clef is for the left hand. So you have to just answer these questions based on these things. What is a melody and an accompaniment? Melody is something that you sing, and the accompaniment is the music that you use to accompany that, to support that melody. So if I'm playing, let me just quickly show you. If I'm playing, right? Sorry, you're not seeing the piano. Here it is. If I'm playing this, what I'm playing on the left hand is the chords right now. So that is the accompaniment, and the right hand, what is playing is the melody. I can play another accompaniment. So I can play it like that. So now I was using single note melody accompaniments. Accompaniments are of various types, and again that's a practical concept to discuss. Going on, the following 4 statements relate to the 2-bar extract in the piano or the keyboard. The right hand plays the single notes throughout, simple stuff really. True and false, left hand plays single notes throughout. It is not, because it's playing the chords on the left and single notes on the right. You should be able to answer that. Vocals technique. Music written for male or a female voice. The bass clef is for the male range, and the treble clef is for the female range. How many beats should the final note sound for? This is for 2 beats, so you just put a 2 beat. This is again true and false. 3 statements. The clef uses treble, true. First note is a half note held for, that's a false, because first note is a quarter note here. The last note is shorter than the first note, again a false, because last note is for 2 beats and the first note is for 1 beat. Simple stuff, ranges of the voices. So which is the lowest, which is the highest, and you have to take it from the pitch range from lowest to the highest. So lowest is 1, so this bass will be 1, tenor will be 2, alto will be 3, and the soprano will be 4. Soprano is the highest vocal range, high pitch females. Mid-pitch females is alto, high-pitch males is tenor, and low-pitch males is bass. There are further ranges between these, which will be discussed later. Soprano and tenors usually sing by female, false, because tenor is a male range. Bass and tenor is a male, yes. Soprano and alto is female, yes. Right? Now we come to the final section of it, and we are making good time. It was supposed to be for 90 minutes, and we have only 15 minutes left, so please stick around. In case you're leaving early, and this recording will be available to you on the same link. If you like what you just saw, please do hit the like and do subscribe, so we can keep you updated about the latest happening with us. What is going to happen is you'll be given a band score. This is for the vocals in the piano. It could be for the bass and the drums. It could be for an entire band moving forward, higher grades. So there will be some questions based on based on this musical passage here. So what is the tempo of the piece? The tempo is 100 BPM. Don't write BPM, write beats per minute. What is the time signature used? It is a 4/4, which is 4 quarter note beats in a bar. What type of clef is being used for the left hand part of the piano? Left hand part of the piano is bass clef. One thing that I would like to highlight is when we write answer to this question, typically students tend to write 4/4. That is absolutely wrong because this is not a fraction. I will just cut it off and say it's 1. It is not a fraction. The top number is for the number of beats in a bar. Bottom number is the value of 1 beat. It is not a fraction. It is not to be even referred to as 4/4. It should be called 4/4. It should be written 4/4 like this, right? What is the key in this piece? The key is C major because there is no key signature here. What is the pitch of the highest sounding vocal part? Highest sounding vocal part is G here. Then coming down, what is the pitch of the lowest sounding note played by the left hand on the piano? Lowest sounding note played by the left hand is G. In bar 4 of the vocal part, how many beats does the rest last for? This is for 2 beats, right? What is the shortest note length played by the left hand part of the piano? Shortest note length is a quarter note. Name the 3 notes that make up the chord in the right hand part of the piano in bar 1. Name the notes, that is C, E, and G, and this is making the C major chord, and name the chord as C major. In bar 2 of the score, which part includes a note that is not found in the G major chord? Bar 2 is this, and you have to consider the vocal and the piano part, and you can see there's an F note which doesn't belong to the part, so this is the vocal part in which you find that note. Finally, in bar 3 of the score, name the note in the vocal part that is not found in the C major chord. So bar 3 of the score is this, and you can see that there is a D note used which is not found in the C major. Question 12, in which bars of the score do the 2 parts perform the same rhythm for the full 4 beats? So which 2 parts perform the same rhythm? Please don't consider piano as part 1, vocals as part 2. This is vocal is part 1, the right hand is part 2, left hand of the piano is part 3. So this is a 3-part music happening. Left hand is playing one part, right hand is playing another part, and the vocals is playing other part. So the part vocals and the left hand part of the piano are using the same rhythm in the first bar. So in which bar? Answer is bar 1. Okay. Which melodic interval is created between the first 2 notes in bar 1 in the left hand part of the piano? This is the interval they're talking about. C to G, it's a fifth, right? Which melodic interval is created between the 2 notes in bar 4 on the left hand of the piano? We're talking about this, and the interval is a third. Line to line, it's a third. G, A, B. G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, so it's a third. Add G major chord in the last bar for this, quarter note, and a half note. So I will repeat the arpeggios once this whole session is over. We are about the end, so I'm going to explain that to you separately. At the end of the session, I'll explain it, please. So next question is, what is the tempo of this piece? This is going to be 96 quarter note beats in a minute. What is the time signature used? It is 4/4. Again, not 4/4, it is 4/4. What is the key in this piece? You can see 1 sharp, that is a G major. What type of clef is being used in the guitar part? The treble clef is being used for the guitar part. Bar 1 of the guitar part, how many beats does the rest last for? This note is hanging from the 4th line, that means it's a rest for 4 beats. This rest is also a 1 complete bar rest in any time signature. And this is again something that you will go over again and again in future sessions. What is the pitch of the highest sounding note in the bass guitar? The highest sounding note is an A here. And suppose it was an F, you have to also consider the sharp here, and your answer would be F sharp and not just an F. What is the pitch of the lowest sounding note in bar 3 of the bass guitar? That's a C, bar 3 of the bass guitar. Which is the longest note length in the bass guitar part? Longest note length is a half note. Name the chord in the guitar part in bar 2. That's a G major chord. This is the bar 2, and the notes are G, B, D, which is a tonic in the key of G major. Name the three notes that make up the chord in guitar part bar 3. That is a C major chord, C, E, G. This chord can also be used in the key of G major, by the way, so please don't get confused. We are not only talking about the tonic chord. There could be more chords used in the same key. In bar 3 of the score, name the note not found in the C major chord. So this is the bar 3, and you can see this note A here is not found in the C major. C, E, G are the three notes. This is C, E, G, and G. This is the A note which is not found. You circle that. In which bars does the bass guitar play the same rhythm? So you will study the rhythm here. This is 2 followed by 4/8 notes. So this bar is certainly not the same as this. This is again a note for 2 beats followed by 4/8 notes. So the bar 1 and bar 3 have the same rhythm. Bar 2 and 4 do not have the same rhythm because the last note is longer. So bar 1 and 3 is your correct answer. What is the melodic interval created between the first two notes of bar 3 of the bass guitar part? Melodic interval created between the first two notes of bar 3. This one they're talking about, it's a third. On which beat of the bar does the guitar play in bar 3? This is beat 2. Beat 1 is a rest, and 3 and 4 is also a rest. So beat 2 is your correct answer. Add G major chord and a rest to the final bar on the right hand part of the piano part in the following rhythm, right? Okay, this is a printing error. I'm going to highlight this with they're talking about the guitar part here for sure. This is a printing error. I'm going to highlight this with the academic team, and the next print will have fixed this. Quarter note, rest, and a half note. G major chord. So you would write it here. G major chord is G, B, D. So that's a quarter note. Then we need a quarter note rest, lightning sign with a C, and a half note. So you would write the G major chord, G, B, and D, and this. So this is what you're required to write. In bar 1, what does the 85 BPM mean? 85 beats per minute, right? 85 quarter note beats per minute, to be exact. What time signature is used in the piece? It is 3/4. That's 3 crotchet beats in a bar. Explain the meaning of both upper and lower numbers of the time signature. Let me just say that very simply. Top number is number of beats in a bar, right? Number of beats in a bar. And the bottom number is time value of one beat. Right? Time value of one beat. That is what the lower number means. By upper and lower, they're talking about the same thing. This is also the same thing, right? So don't get confused. Why did I highlight the lower number in the lower stuff? It's the same thing. So top number means number of beats in a bar. Bottom number means the time value of one beat. What is the key of this music? There is no sharps and flats. So this is C major. What type of clef is being used? I'm sure you can answer these questions. Pretty simple stuff. Length of the rest in bar 1. Yeah, length of the rest. Number 6, this is an 8th note rest. What is the pitch of the highest sounding note in the bass guitar part? The highest note is a D note. How many times does the drummer play the snare in bar 1 to 3? This is an important one. How many times is the snare being sounded from bar 1 to 3? So you can see this is 1, 2, and 3. So it's sounded 3 times. Which drum voices or voice or voices are playing on the beat 3 of the bar 1? Beat 3 of the bar 1. There's a hi-hat and a snare. So you'll take the hi-hat and you take the snare. In which bars does the drummer play the same rhythm? Drummer plays the same rhythm in bar 1 and 3. Sorry, I'm going a little fast, but you will be able to go back to this recording and check what I'm saying. You can pause the videos and see what I'm doing. In which bar does the bass guitar play the same rhythm as the bass drum and snare drum part of the drums? So where is the bass note hitting notes with everything that is playing on the bass drum and the snare? That is really the question. So this is bass guitar is playing, bass guitar is playing, bass guitar. So it's bar 2. In bar 1, the bass drum hits the end of the second beat, but bass player is not doing it. Here, again, the bass guitar is playing on the second beat, whereas the bass drum is playing on the end of the second beat. What is the melodic interval created between the first two notes of bar 3 of the bass guitar? They're talking about first two notes of bar 3, which is this, and the interval is a fourth. Bar 4 of the bass guitar part is incomplete. Add a rest to complete the bar. So this will be a rest of 2 beats there. In the score, circle an 8th note played by the snare drum. So this is the only 8th note that the snare drum is playing. This was a quarter note and a quarter note. Add 3 quarter notes to bar 4 of the drum part. Use the following voices. Bar 4 of the drum part is this. So you have B. This is only 3 because there are only 3 beats in a bar. Bass drum, snare drum, bass drum. So you write a bass drum here, snare drum here, and a bass drum here. Mind you, this is writing 2 parts on the same. So hi-hat stems are always going up and all the other stems will keep coming down. That's the end of the session. Thank you so much for staying till the end. Please do hit the like and leave your comments. My email ID is there with you all because I emailed you last night with the link to this webinar. The same link will be available as a recording to this webinar going forward. So please do that. I am going to quickly explain the arpeggios to Sarguna, who has asked me this question. So let me just go to my piano and I'll explain arpeggios. So arpeggio is basically a scale. The tonic chord is made of the 1st, 3rd, and the 5th note. So I can keep repeating these notes one after the other if I like. And that is called the arpeggio. I'm using the notes of the chord from starting at the C, then I'm going to C, E, G. I'm only playing these 3 notes. I'm not touching any other note which is not part of the tonic chord. That is an arpeggio, right? Thank you so much for staying till the end, and do spread the word with other people. Next week is going to be the grade 1 on the Wednesday, same time 11 a.m. and possibly it will be 90 minutes as this time. So please spread the word and get more and more teachers to join up for this. So we are able to help more teachers. Thank you so much.